Have you ever looked at the sky during a storm and felt like you were the only one getting rained on? Have you pleaded and prayed for the trial to end, only to be met with a deafening silence that feels like abandonment? We are often told that faith is a shield, but what happens when the arrows of life still find their way through? It's a question that can shake us to our core. But what if the purpose of the storm isn't to break you, but to reveal a strength you never knew you possessed? The journey through hardship often begins with a sudden, disorienting shattering of our world. One moment, life is stable, predictable, even blessed. The next, a phone call, a diagnosis, or a betrayal leaves everything in ruins. We see this in the ancient story of Job, a man who had it all, family, wealth, and health, only to lose it in a cascade of tragedies. His experience mirrors our own initial shock when adversity strikes. The first reaction is confusion, then pain, and finally, the desperate question, why? It feels unfair, personal, and profoundly lonely. We look for answers, for a reason to the chaos, but none seem to come. This is the valley of silence, where our faith is stretched thin and God feels distant. We may even feel that we are being punished for some unknown wrong. It's in this initial impact that the foundation of our belief is tested, where the roots of our faith must decide whether to hold firm in unseen soil or be ripped out by the violent winds of circumstance. But what if that crushing silence isn't abandonment? What if it's the quiet before a profound revelation? The underlying cause of this was something that couldn't be understood from the middle of the storm. After the initial shock comes a different kind of struggle, one that happens inside our own minds. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers and thrown into a pit, then sold and later imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. His physical prisons were real, but the greater danger was the prison of bitterness, despair, and resentment that could have easily captured his soul. When we are wronged, when life is deeply unjust, our perspective becomes the battlefield. It's tempting to replay the events, to nurse the wound, and to let anger become the lens through which we see the world. We can become trapped in a cycle of what-ifs and if-onlys. Yet, even in the darkness of a dungeon, Joseph held onto a flicker of hope. He chose to serve, to interpret dreams, to use his gifts even when it seemed pointless. He refused to let his external circumstances dictate his internal character. This is where a crucial turn happens in our own journey. We must confront the choice. Will we let our pain define us, or will we look for God's hand, even when we can only see shadows? He refused to let his circumstances define his character, but his story was far from over. The situation then escalated in a way that would test him to his very core. Sometimes the trial isn't a sudden disaster or a deep betrayal, but a long, drawn-out period of waiting and wandering. This is the wilderness season. Look at David. Anointed as the future king, he spent years on the run, hiding in caves, and fighting for his life against a jealous King Saul who wanted him gone. From the outside, it looked like a major setback. The promise God had given him seemed to be a lie. He was living like a fugitive, not a future king. But that wilderness was not a waiting room. It was a classroom. It was his university. In those lonely, difficult years, David learned reliance on God like never before. He learned leadership, commanding a loyal band of followers. He learned humility, mercy, and patience. Most importantly, he learned to pour out his heart to God, writing psalms that still give voice to our deepest fears and highest praises. Your own wilderness, that period of uncertainty, of waiting for a breakthrough, of feeling lost, is not wasted time. It is a sacred training ground where God is quietly equipping you, shaping your character, and preparing you for the purpose He has for your life. He was being molded into a king long before he ever wore a crown. However, there was more to come, a different kind of battle that isn't fought in a wilderness, but within the soul itself. What about the struggles that don't go away? Not the storms that pass, but the thorns that remain. The Apostle Paul spoke of a thorn in his flesh, a persistent affliction he begged God to remove. We all have thorns. It might be a chronic illness, a recurring pattern of weakness, a painful memory, or a personal struggle that makes us feel inadequate. We pray for deliverance, for the weakness to be turned into strength. But sometimes the answer we get is not the one we want. God's response to Paul was one of the most powerful paradoxes in all of faith. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. This turns our entire understanding of strength on its head. We believe we must be strong, capable, and have it all together for God to use us. But God says the opposite. He says that when we are at the end of our rope, when we have nothing left to give, that is when His power can truly shine through us. Our weakness is not a disqualification. It is the very stage upon which His grace performs its greatest work. True strength isn't about having no weaknesses. It's about surrendering them to Him. This single truth changes everything we think we know about strength. What followed next was even more remarkable, a complete reversal of human logic. So why the fire? Why the pressure? Why must we endure these trials to find this strength? Because strength of character, like a sword, is not simply created. It is forged. A blacksmith takes a raw piece of metal and puts it into the fire. The intense heat softens it, making it pliable. Then comes the hammer. Blow after blow, the metal is beaten, shaped, and folded. With each strike, impurities are forced out, and the internal structure of the steel becomes stronger, more resilient. Our trials are God's forge. The heat of adversity softens our pride and self-reliance. The hammer of hardship beats away our impurities, our selfishness, our fear, our misplaced priorities. It's a painful process, one we would never choose for ourselves. But through it, our faith is purified. Our character is strengthened. We are molded into something more beautiful, more durable, and more useful than we were before. We emerge from the fire not burned, but refined, carrying a resilience that can only be born in the flames. We emerge from the fire not just intact, but transformed. But that wasn't the whole story, because this new strength isn't just for us. In the end, the scars we carry from our battles become a map for others. The strength we gain in our adversity is not meant to be hoarded for our own survival. It becomes our testimony. When you have walked through the valley of the shadow, a beacon that declares to a watching world that our God is with us in the fire, and He can bring beauty from the ashes. Your story of survival becomes someone else's survival guide. This reveals the ultimate purpose behind our deepest pain. The trials we face are not a sign that God has forgotten us. On the contrary, they are often a sign that He is doing a deep and transformative work within us. From the shattering of our old lives to the prison of our perspective, from the university of the wilderness to the power found in weakness, each stage is part of a divine process. We are being forged, refined, and strengthened. The pain is real, but it is not the end. The final product, a person with unshakable faith, profound character, and a story that brings hope to others, is worth the journey. So look at the storm you are in right now. Perhaps it's not there to drown you. Perhaps it's God teaching you how to walk on water.